Sharon Fredericks. I'm the CNO Director for St. Joseph Home Health. We have recently gone through a CMS recertification survey, and from those findings we have a few things that we still need to look at in the agency. What we spent a lot of time on with education the past few weeks since the survey in early January is that there's a lot of Allscripts that we are not using. So what we've tried to do in the next hour and a half on this video is I'm going to give you a rundown of what happened through the survey, a lot of the things that the surveyors found for us that we could maybe use in our Allscripts, and then some takeaway for you guys that I hope is going to save time. I know that in the beginning it's not going to feel like it, but our whole goal of this is that all the nurses are doing the same work and you could find the documentation in the very same place. Because otherwise, just like you guys have to look through everything, OFF has to look through it. We're doing a lot of work now with the community care nurses, so we need to be able to direct them to one place, etc. So over the next 2 months, this is going to feel a little new again to some of us, but I think overall in the long run, that what we're trying to accomplish now will help everybody. So we know that in our everyday visits and our care to the patients that we are accountable to a lot of people. First of all, to yourself and your standards of care, and then of course your nursing license. That's our biggest accountability. So of course when the state comes, they look at safety of the patients, which we're all concerned about, and they look at how not only to keep our agency licensed and certified to receive Medicare money, but our surveyors have known us for a long time, so they actually help us with some of the liability against my license, your license, Linda's license as the CEO of the agency, and some of the things that liability-wise are happening out there in the community. So they act in a consultative way that way. Of course, we're accountable to others within the system and the community. Again, I mentioned our agency, of course, ultimately to the sisters, to the physicians all the time, and here we go, to the patients. So here's quickly what the surveyors found as an overview. Most of you have heard this on your voicemails, but I'm going to start off the morning this way. So not following our policy of the weekly wound measurements, timeliness of mostly interdisciplines, not getting out there on start of care, but the interdisciplines may be getting out there as timely as our policy states. Overall, then, not following physician's orders is what most of this falls into. But of course, you need to look at when we're not following physician's orders, your license is at stake because you don't have the orders to cover what you're doing. So we didn't document notification of any missed visits to the physician. The physician's orders requesting an order for treatment, especially of wounds or interdisciplinary services, was not consistent in their findings. The pulse oximeter was being used with and without an order, and just because that's just a little tiny instrument, we're going to go through that a little later on. This is a new one. What they have found in the charts in the community is that all of us do a lot of instruction, leave patients independent, but we do not inform the physician of that exact independence, what the patient can do. And so for some reason, which I didn't get time to ask them, that has to go in your physician orders right now. So we'll be spending time on that. And of course, med reconciliation. So what we've tried to do with the handouts in front of you is standardize a little bit, which if we're going to help you guys standardize, first of all, we have to standardize in education. So what you will find in your handouts is a purpose of why we're focusing probably on Foley's, wounds, infusion, and all that. The problems will be in there in the second or third little bullet point down. You will see definitions, you will see the regulations of why this is so important. You're going to see RN and licensure a lot. You're going to see where you will document in Allscripts and how to get there. There will be screenshots. There will be what you put in your clinical note and what you don't need to put in your clinical note anymore. There will always be a view orders because we know that everybody is struggling to see what did I write the doctor. We don't always realize what is written and not written. So that will be in every standing format of any of the education coming out from now on. So you will see that. So in our plan and our response back to the state, I've mentioned that we are going to maximize the Allscripts. We're going to use fewer words. There's a care coordination tab that none of us use very well, probably don't even know it's there. So we're going to look at that a little bit, and that'll be something ongoing as we all get used to that of how it can help with you leaving messages for everyone else on your team. There's also a tab called Med Evaluation that we're finding in all the classes that we're teaching that everybody's not really using that the way that we could use it. Again, we're going to go over frequency and duration, and Cheer has offered that if you would like to self-schedule, it takes 45 minutes to an hour. So as you get comfortable with all the documentation and feel that you can add something else, go meet with Cheer for your self-scheduling. That will, believe it or not, help you with the frequency and duration. So, what is new? The patient caregiver is independent, the care coordination, Medi-Val, and of course our viewing orders. So this is what you're going to hear a lot. To be in compliance, we have standardized documentation, but the biggest thing is we're going to have to learn to trust and listen to each other. So what Jaime has done in some of our lean processes and team meetings is come in and we actually do exercises. And we all think that we're trusting each other, but we're not to the point where we feel comfortable calling up and saying, you know what, Rose, I think in that education class you were probably sleeping because I don't see your fully capsized any place, so can I walk through it with you? So that's the level of trust we need to be, because I don't have resources, and we all know you don't probably want any more QA people calling you. But we're going to have to listen to and look and view of what each of us don't understand and help to be mentors to especially new people and the veterans of the agency. So I know some of you sitting in class today are really, really good in the computer. And some of you are probably still struggling even if you've been here for 3 or 4 years. What is really old? This is what we continue not to do well. Frequency and duration, assessment, pulse ox, instruction, understanding, and communication between everybody. So we're going to hear a lot today about the physician's orders, how those are driven by your problems, how you must discontinue problems and start new ones, and how you're going to look at them. And I'm also going to take this opportunity to remind you that authorization has been in on a lot of the standardization as we went forward here since January. And so they are saying too, there's only certain things that you can accomplish in 6 to 8 authorized visits. So if the patient has 20 problems, and you can get those all done in 8 visits, you're probably a miracle worker and reconciling all the meds. So focus on the problems that are going to get you and the patient to your best chosen outcomes. Keep them out of the hospital, get them back to recovery, get those meds reconciled, get them to the doctor's office. Okay? You probably can't add another 15 things to that. Talked about problems. If you can't find the problems, this is what you have to do. Then you don't have orders. You're going to have to view at the end of the day. So for your clinical notes, this is the good part. We have found in all of this that there's a lot of redundancy. In fact, if nurses think there's redundancy, you haven't heard rehab meetings yet. So we're going to use fewer words in the clinical note. So as you think of this and what we're teaching today, think of your clinical note as here's a headline or here's an alarm button. So I don't need to see I went into the patient's home and the infusion went really well, and then, we talked about meds because the meds are going to be under med evaluation. What you might want to say is, delivery of the meds in the mail is not occurring, because that's an alarm button. Everybody's going to be in trouble and that patient could end up in the hospital again. Or your next teammate can't do what they need to accomplish. So to go on and on about things that you find in the assessment and the clinical notes, you don't need to do anymore. And Auth is backing us up on this. So use it so that community care nurse would know there's something wrong, Auth would know there's something wrong, and each of the nurses and rehab therapists following you will know there's something really important about this patient that happened on your visit. Where we're going to go with Allscripts, most of you can read this as I talk. I want to say thank you if you've been on any of the committees or supported your teammates while they came in to work on some of the things that are in front of you at this point on the infusion, wound, and medication committee meetings. So I know it's been a burden on other people because you've picked up other visits while that's being done, but the great thing is I think we have a wonderful start on how we can optimize Allscripts, and we intend to keep that going. Here's what you're going to hear. Okay? So I need for you to open your laptop to listen really well. And since we are on video, I'm going to remind you, if you have questions, could you raise your hand so that our videographer has a second to cut out that question, and then if we need to put it in again, because sometimes they're very specific just to this class and not the other classes, okay? Are we ready? Okay, let me introduce 2 wonderful educators. So Rose is going to help, she's going to be center stage, and Kelly is going to do the technical stuff.
So let me give you guys a little rundown on this packet, okay? There are multiple task forces that worked on this, so it's a huge effort in terms of the agency. We had field clinicians on different task forces, managers, UR staff. Okay, so this is a big undertaking. So that being said, just bear in mind, what we're saying is for right now, we may need to tweak some things as we find out things may not be working, but this is our response to the state survey. So this is part of our plan of correction. And if you look at these sheets, everybody has the same responsibility. We're going to highlight it. So basically, you guys got to really read it, okay? Because there's a lot of information in here, and we understand that. You're going to have a purpose, an impact, a regulatory statement, talks about the problem, and standard work. So for this particular part, we're going to be talking about caregiver capabilities. Part of the problem is, which is a new problem being identified within the home health agencies. State is now requiring us to have some form of documentation within the record that indicates who is doing what in the home, meaning what the caregivers are doing. An example is if we have an order for a wound care that we are providing 3 times a week, we have a visit frequency for once a week. We need to identify that that skilled or that the caregiver is the one that's providing the wound care those 2 other times. Even if we're just doing a wound care and there's an ostomy involved and that patient is independent, been independent for years, we need to have that statement somewhere within the record indicating patient's wife has been taking care of colostomy for 20 years, is independent. Part of this process is we're trying to standardize where we want the information so it's not in 5 different places because we have 5 opportunities to get it wrong and we were able to show that we were able to do it 5 different ways. So, a part of the standardization process. Yes, John?
My question is, after that's put in once, do we have to do that at every visit? Or is that going to be somewhere that we're going to be able to look at it quickly before we go out to the patient's home? So like if I'm a new nurse going out and I've never seen this patient before, do I have to repeat everything with the person before me or each time?
Now here's what's coming down.
Okay.
What we've established is we need to have a location where it says care coordination. So with involvement with Allscripts, what we're going to end up doing is, we have several problems, wound, urinary. We're going to have a care coordination intervention, and then with an empty modifier. And all that we would be required to do is, depending on what system is being affected, we're going to have a care coordination intervention, open modifier that we would indicate who is actually providing, okay? So that's coming. Is it in place right now? No. There are interventions in each problem currently that you can use, and it talks about who's been educated. And we for this case, and just keep in mind we're in training mode. So the wording can be a little different, doesn't always mirror live mode. We chose this one under wound, and it actually identifies who's performing the wound care. So what we did is we put in the modifier, and if we hover over it, we'll see that the statement is actually that it's a patient's wife, Kim, performs the wound care as ordered twice a week with skilled nurse to perform the wound care once a week. And it's a statement that you would leave open, okay? You would not close it unless the wound is closed or unless the infusion therapy is ended. Then you would close it. That way, because we're all looking at problems. So if you're following my patient, it will give you a clear indication so that you can be able to look at it and say, okay, so Kim, it's my understanding that you're the one that's providing the wound care, and it's just to rehash it to make sure that care is being coordinated in the home. Okay? That answer the question? So we just need to make sure that we're coordinating the care regarding wound care, infusion care, ostomy. Here's the other one that's different, diabetes. We had patients that were in there that were actually drawing blood sugar, doing their own, but we couldn't really prove that because it wasn't really clearly documented. So this is where that statement would be. It would be under the diabetes wound. Once we put that care coordination tab, you would put in there. Patient has been checking blood sugar independently for the last 20 years, independent. So that the statement is there. Okay, so if we're looking at, for like right now in training mode, so if I'm in metabolic and I go ahead and add a row, right? So if we're looking at this right now, as we're doing assess, instruct, patient, caregiver on management, we have the opportunity to actually at least go down and make sure, just to make sure there's nothing else in here. Okay. So if we go all the way up, we could actually probably put it right here. Assess, instruct patient caregiver on diabetes management and complications. Under the modifier, for right now, you could put patient is independent with checking blood sugars. That way the statement is there so that we're all clear who's managing their diabetes in terms of the glucose monitoring in the home. Okay? So for right now, that's what we're going to do until the care coordination intervention is inputted into the program under each problem. So it'll be all there. It'll be standard. Okay? But it's something that we need to start doing. Okay? Okay, so if you look at the next few pages, it's going to go over again, purpose, impact, regulatory definitions, and problems. Problem that we had during state survey and we had a deficiency was our med reconciliation process. We had a clinician out in the home, did her part of the med reconciliation. The med list on the computer tablet did not match all the meds that the patient had brought out. We had several updates that were missed, opportunities that were missed. Lantus was one of them. Patient had been taking a different dose of Lantus that was on the list, and the patient's like, oh yeah, a couple weeks ago. I told the nurse. Okay, so part of the process. So as we all know, part of the process during our visits, med reconciliation. So to make it clear from a regulatory standpoint, the comprehensive assessment must include review of all meds the patient is currently using in order to identify any potential adverse reactions, drug reactions, ineffective drug therapy, significant side effects, and on and on. A reconciliation, med reconciliation is a formal process for creating the most complete and accurate list of that's possible with patients' current medications. So some of the problems, again, where we had different lists here, we had the list, and we had the meds in front completely different, or some that we missed. So as we know, we're doing our med reconciliation, we're supposed to be checking the list on the meds with the actual list that the patient has within their possession. Not so much a process change, it's just we need to make sure everybody's clear in that. So part of the process is when we're reconciling, we have bags that we were using in the past that are making a comeback, meaning 2 little Ziploc bags. If we ever have questions regarding medications, especially during starts of care, and they get that discharge list from the hospital, and they say, well, what about all these? Well, for right now, we're sticking to this list because this is what you were discharged on. This is what we have orders on. We're going to take that list of medication or that group of meds. We're going to put it in a bag. These are the meds that you're going to need to take back to your primary care physician. Or part of the reconciliation process is, if we're noticing that there is some really huge discrepancies, is to make that call to the physician and get those questions answered. Part of the med reconciliation process.
I'm going to add a couple things. Nice job, Rose, but I'm going to add because this is a passion of mine, this med reconciliation thing. Remember, reconciliation is the current meds that you think will keep the patient stable, especially if they have come home from the hospital with that list. That doesn't mean that they're not going to add some of their medications from what they've been taking, like if they're diabetic or whatever. But that's where you are licensed to help them. And then Kelly's going to show you that there's some really great little tools within the med evaluation that'll help you also. But don't hesitate to get a hold of the physicians. A lot of times we're finding if we write down some of the meds and fax it to them, you can call in here, your manager can print it off to them. It can be faxed, you might get a faster response. The other thing to remember is that Medicare, under OASIS, assumes that we want to take 5 days to totally assess that patient, home, and medications. So we know that we can't get all the teaching done that first day. We might not be able to get the patient to trust us enough to give all the over-counter, all the meds in the purse, etc. to us. So if you have that feeling as a nurse that you're going to have to take 2 and 3 days just to reconcile 20, 30 meds, then make certain that you let auth know that and you add another visit in there. Okay, because med reconciliation is that huge of an issue with all the hospitals in the St. Joseph system, that they are anticipating that we are going to be the people that put that together. So take your time, add another visit, and have somebody go out the next day. Question from the group is, what if I get out there and there are a lot of herbs, a lot of over-the-counter concoctions in the home that are not in our database to reconcile? First of all, you can call Kurt, the pharmacy downstairs, and get a hold of one of the pharmacists. There are actually herbal intervention books. They probably have access, and you can pull it up on their app. That's going to take a couple days, so you've got a problem now. And so build that into your problem, and that would be a really great thing to put in the clinical note. You know, 57 herbs in the home. Yeah. So that means anybody looking at that knows we have a lot of potential for harm to that patient if we don't get it straightened out. So that's an alarm button. Okay? Good question, thank you.
During survey, the other concern that the surveyors had was we were not properly documenting our PRN medications within the med list. As we all know as clinicians, if we have an order for a medication, we have to have the reason that we are providing that particular medication. Okay? So, if you have multiple pain medications, we need to have PRN mild, PRN mod, PRN severe, PRN breakthrough. Okay? So that was another deficiency that we did receive, and it was because we weren't identifying. Now remember that also goes into effect, not goes into effect, but that also applies to our bowels management. So we need to have the PRN if it's constipation. We need to have stool softener, Colace. If this is not working, then you may use milk of magnesia. So it needs to be a little bit more clear than what we're actually showing. Okay? You guys have any questions regarding PRNs? Okay. So there is a process change within the agency that we need to go over. Okay, so there is a part in the medication screen, and if you look halfway down, there's a tab halfway that says medication evaluation. Is there anybody in here that's actually using that tab right now? Okay, all right. So the medication evaluation gives you the opportunity to put the date, and if you can note if there's any of these problems, as well as make a comment in here. We're going to show you in the assessment right now where you're not going to need to answer the assessment questions based upon putting this information here. As registered nurses, starts of care, this is a requirement. Start of care, you need to put this in. Recert, resumption of care, and discharge. Okay? As a whole agency, anytime anybody is adding anything to the list, you need to do that. You need to run it. And we're going to show you how to do it right now, but I need to show you the part of the assessment that you're not going to need to answer. Okay? And this is going to help decrease that redundancy of information. So if we look at the care management part of the assessment, and it's going to be under, I think it's under med education, this box, okay? We're asking you guys to go ahead and hit no medications taught, okay? And the reason for that is you're going to capture, if you're teaching any meds, on that med eval, and you're going to put it in there, okay? Those of you, well, everybody in this room or this particular class, we all do starts of care. There's an opportunity when you're doing a start of care, and it gives you a lot of questions in the assessment to go through, okay? You have the chance to click the box that says, I've already answered all these questions in the med list. That's all you would need to do is click that button, because you're doing it right here, okay? We're trying to prevent that redundancy of information, okay? So, in order for you to do a med evaluation, you actually need to run a drug-to-drug, right? Is everybody aware of this button? It's a button on the med screen, right up here, drug-to-drug. And that's how you run it. The program will take a look at all the meds you have listed and let you know if you have any fatal or severe, right, interactions.
Major.
That's right. So as an agency, we are asking, you need to notify the physician if there's any fatal or severe interactions. That's agency protocol. Okay. What's nice about this feature, oh, she's showing you what it looks like for unfortunately, we didn't use a good example. There's no interactions with the list that we put together. But that's what you're looking for. You guys have any questions?
On
Please.
that med evaluation, I tried doing that a couple of times, and I got so frustrated, I wanted to pull my hair out.
Okay, and Kelly's gonna show you, because
Oh, good.
if you check off the box, right, if you check off each one of these little boxes, it makes you put something in there.
Well, the thing
Well,
is,
once
though,
you-
sometimes it just automatically clicks them all,
It does.
and I hate that.
So she's gonna show you right now, so
Okay.
Kelly's gonna show you.
Okay.
We realize that that's what's happened to a lot of people, and once they get stuck in that loop, they say forget it.
Yeah,
So I'm
it's-
gonna show you what you have to do to make this box work. When you add your row here, now you're committed, and the screen is not gonna let you move forward unless you work now in this box. So you have to put the evaluation date, okay, and then the special trick is to go in, I'm going to use the red dot,
Okay.
and to uncheck all those grayed out box, checks in the box. So you double click it, it removes, it clears it actually, so that you can actually do some work in here if you need to. Once you've cleared all those boxes by clicking twice, now you can check the boxes, only the ones you want or only the ones that apply. Check it, go to the drop down, it's a free text, and you can put the no interactions noted here.
Is there a reason why that all of them, you have to uncheck all of them? It seems like
It's just the program. It's the program,
it's just,
unfortunately.
it's just time consuming.
Yeah.
And it's not small in and of itself, but when you add everything else, I mean, I was up till like 9:30 last night doing my computer work.
We know.
Okay. So, that's what's.
Once you get used to doing this, I really believe you can click through it faster. Once you learn the trick of, double clicking real quickly and then going all the way down, and you can come to the comments section. And this is where you can state which meds you taught, so that the next nurse coming after you knows where to pick up the baton and teach from there. And what's beautiful about this part is, do you see the history here? Now you see it stacking. And now at resumption of care or recert or a brand new med, then you come here, and this is when you're expected to fill this out, okay? If there's no meds, there's no changes, Joy, you don't even come to this section. So that'll save you some time as well.
But this is, we need to do this for every medication when we do start of care.
No, not for, okay. Okay, during start of care, I'm going to say, I just added all these lists. This is my start of care. I indicated which ones are new for my start of care. All I would do is add a row, double click all these boxes here. On the comment side, I would say start of care done, meds reconciled. Move on. Okay, and then on my start of care part of the assessment, where it has that huge log screen about med evaluation, there is a box that says, please refer to the med screen regarding med reconciliation. It negates about 6 or 7 clicks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to talk to you about visit frequency, so if you'll please refer to this slide, and I want to ask you that after class that you really use these as a reference, because we've noticed that we've been on Allscripts for 2.5 years now, and this is still confusing, and nobody still gets it. And we get that. We also understand that you've received previous instruction on which boxes to check or not. So this is the latest, and this is what, starting today or tomorrow, whenever you work next, is when we want you to start using these boxes. So you see, we just changed into a new research period today, so I'm just going to click back on the old one so you can see this, okay? So I just wanted to say that in Allscripts is continually generating orders. Anything you're entering, if you're checking boxes or you're not checking boxes, it's just furiously generating orders. So how Allscripts works is, if you don't want an order to be generated, you have to check a box. And in our logical minds, we think that should be the opposite. And we're not really sure why Allscripts designed it that way, but I really believe that they did it to force compliance. So that's how come they did it that way. But so what we need you to do on this is, for a start of care, you would check the cert recert box, and the no end sub, and you would leave the no start sub blank. And that includes all the orders that you are putting in for frequency day 1 through 5. So if you're writing a couple of lines in here, like you're doing a 2-week 1 and then a 3-week 5, all of that goes on the start of care, the cert, the no end sub. Okay, and I'll tell you why I said it like that, because on the second page here, you have a visit frequency now for days 6 through 54 of your cert period. Okay, and so you come along, it's after now the first 5 days, the UR department has sent out that 485, all those orders have been generated. So we have this rule now that day 6, and we can trust that the UR has done that, so you know that on day 6, you now want your orders to be generated. So in that case, now you're going to leave, second line is the example I'm using, is you leave your recert box unchecked. You leave it blank, and you only check your no end sub. Okay? And that way the order generates. What we found is that orders were hiding because we checked the boxes and it didn't generate orders, which also showed us that we weren't in compliance with our orders when the state came. Okay, and then one second. And then Rose has had an epiphany during this time, and I'd like her to share her neat finding there.
We understand this is confusing, okay, and that you've been told various things. Biggest one, if we can just get you right now to keep in here. Never, ever, ever check the no start set box in visit frequency. If we can get that and drive it home, we're doing good. Because everyone in this room, myself included, I have already seen patients just like you, and I didn't have a physician order. Okay, so we're all in the same boat. Okay, we're swimming upstream as we're going. But never, ever, ever click the no start set box in visit frequency. Okay, so that being said, days 1 through 5, you always want to tell the program to put it on the cert and not to send an order when we end, right? Okay. There is a process change regarding PRNs, okay? All right. So, regarding PRNs, okay, as we're doing our starts of care, we must put an end date on PRNs. This is new. We must put a PRN date. Our end date has to match the end date of our cert period. So for this cert period, if I was doing start of care December 9th, on my PRN, it needed to end the last day of the cert period. Explanation for that is, as we became more savvy with the program and we couldn't get our visits to sync through, we were all clicking the PRN button. Some of us had maybe 10 PRN visits. We really didn't have a signature for that, okay? So this is the fix, okay? So if you're putting in a PRN, you must have an end date, okay? A couple other things about visit frequency. You never, ever, ever edit anybody else's work, right? Don't change anybody else's work. The program will allow you to edit in visit frequency. Never, ever edit. You can edit on your starts of care. That's the only exception. When intake puts it in, you can edit that. That's the only time. But if Joy's got a frequency in there, and I'm saying, oh no, that's not effective anymore, it's no longer daily. I taught him, I need to switch it. I'm just going to go in there and switch. No. End the order that's there, okay, and start a new frequency. So under this section, physician orders, documentation of contact with the physician. We took ahead because we had multiple orders out. They weren't being signed. We had them going to the wrong doctor. I was generating orders, sending my urinary and my catheter over to the PCP who wasn't signing, and we had difficulty tracking down the right doctors. Okay, so we need to kind of go over the process. Within the program, under the admission and status, right, that's where you have all the physicians that are listed. The program will always defer to MD number 1. Always, 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 always. So we need to change that whenever we're writing an order, and we're going to show you within the program where you have the opportunity to do that and how to do that. Best practice upon starts of care would be to collect all that information. The problem within the program is, yes, it doesn't tell me who's a PCP, who's an oncologist. We know that. But unfortunately right now, that's how it is right now. Okay? Best practice would be to put all the doctors in here. It'd be nice. Can't always do it. We don't always have the great historians out in the community, and we understand that. That being said, so we need to make sure that we're sending out our orders to the right doctors. We're going to go over the View Orders tab. Okay? The View Orders tab is a quality assurance that we need to do on ourselves. Just like we had to do it on paper, we were taking our orders, documenting what doctor we spoke to. It's the same format. It's your license, my license. If I'm taking an order, you bet your bottom dollar I'm going to make sure it's going to the right doctor, because I don't want a doctor going back and saying, I didn't speak to that nurse, I don't know who that nurse is, I'm not signing. So basically I've left all my family out in the cold. I've left Kim out in the cold because she's been doing what I wrote the order for, thinking in good faith. I am the one that spoke to the doctor, I'm the one that generated the order, and now I don't have a signature on it, so we're in trouble. Okay? So part of that is the clinical responsibility of reviewing your work. As bad or as questionable as we want to say the training was in the very beginning, every single cheat sheet that was provided to you has the same process. At the very end, it always says, view orders. Use the view order tab, okay? We all work in it, okay? So we need to be able to show you how to do that. Okay, so if I go to the problems and I initiate a wound care, and we're going to go, because we already have something written in here. And we're going to go over how to properly write a wound care order, because that's another discussion. So I'll have my wound care here. Anytime you see these 4 little numbers, that's an opportunity to put the correct physician number or the correct physician. Okay? We understand in the admission and status we only have 3 opportunities. We understand some patients have 6 or 7 doctors. But you do have the capability to make sure that that order that you're sending is going to the correct doctor, okay? So automatically, when I hover, it gives me the same 3 doctors that I have in admission and status. But let's say those are not the doctors that I want. Oh, I don't even have the right. Let me go over here and select another physician. By single clicking, it gives me that search box, okay? And you're all shaking your head, so we all understand this process. What we need to understand is if you are looking for a physician and it's not there, there's an actual process in place. We don't always use it, but there's a process in place. You need to take down that name of that doctor, first name and last name, because you're going to put it in your clinical note, right? Because I want to cover myself. I'm going to put it in my clinical note that I received an order by this doctor with the phone number. Then you need to give that information to the manager. The manager needs to follow up with the Allscript designated person that does that Allscript part, which is, I believe, Pat Moon at this time. But there is a process in place. If your team manager requires you or asks you to do a task, put it in a task form, put it in a task form. That is one thing you're going to need to clarify with your manager. Can't find a physician, and it's the same process with meds. Can't find the medication, put it in a clinical note, let the manager know so that it can be taken care of, okay? You guys have any questions about that part? Okay. So, now I'm going to go ahead, this is for the wound care. So I know that I've selected the right doctor. I wanted to go to Al Potty. So once I've done my visit, done my assessment, done my problem charting, done my clinical note, I'm done with my visit. Okay, I want to generate an order. So if I was generating an order for this particular wound, right, I want to leave the no start box. We've got that, right? So I want to generate an order. So now I want to take a look and see what the order looks like. Is it right? Okay. So if I hit view orders, and there's no view orders tab up here currently. So that means I got to go up to the top and grab it. So I go under documents, view orders, single click, and I'm at the screen. But I also have the tab available if I was to go to another section. And then I can go back and click. I will click queued supplemental orders and hit preview. That will give me the opportunity to take a look and see if I am generating the order I want. Not only that, and that it's going to the correct doctor. Okay? So that's my responsibility. So if I was looking at this and I identified, well, gosh, you know, I did it wrong. I'm generating an order here for a wound care, which I don't see. I don't see it. Do you see it?
Mm-mm.
Is it on the second page, maybe? Way down. Look at all the orders we've generated.
Is this for a regular,
You're fine.
like revisit,
Correct.
where you would do this? So all of your original orders are not going to be on that queued
No.
supplemental, right? These
what
are
is here-
additional.
What is here is on the management side, they have to look at everything. So what they've been doing is cleaning it up, making sure the verbiage is right, make sure it's going to the right doctor. So what the managers are doing, they're going back, and that's why we're getting all the calls. Well, that order doesn't make sense. That doesn't really need to go out. The doctor doesn't need to. So they're going back, clicking our boxes, saving, going back and checking. This is what managers have been doing, is cleaning up all the back end. And that's
So
why we're getting-
previously printed orders?
No, I want to go to supplemental, queued supplemental orders.
Yeah, so my question is,
Yes.
those queued supplemental, those are
Orders that have
revisit.
not gone out yet. They're going to go out.
But they're like revisit, they're not,
Yes.
Correct, correct,
okay.
correct.
Not on a 45.
They were
Yes.
added.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Just,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Here's the order you're looking
All right, so here's the order, and I have it going to Abdul Hadi, and I'm like, okay, that's good. It's not really the right buttocks, it's the left buttocks. Okay, big mistake. So what I need to do is, what you need to do is close the window. Okay, you have to close the window, and go back to the problem, edit that order, right? Because I can edit myself until I sync, right? So I'm gonna edit it, make sure I document and change it and put it as the left buttocks. Save it. Then go back to view orders, queued supplemental, and preview. The reason why I'm saying these things is because these are the frantic calls newer nurses will call, other nurses will call. It's because they've done the work, but they're not closing the window. If you don't close that window and queued supplemental order, it'll stay the same. And you'll be like, I've done it, I've saved it, it's not there. Why isn't it there? How come I don't see it? This program is horrible, I can't stand it. And then you're like, close the window. Hit preview again. There it is, I see it, okay, bye. That's fine. But we're just making the statement. There's a reason, okay? So if you do that, it's gonna help. It's gonna help tremendously in terms of cleaning up our orders and making sure that the orders, what we're trying to drive home, it's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's my license that's going out there, okay? I'm the one getting the orders. It's not Teresa. It's not Joy. It's myself. But they're following me. I would appreciate if you did the same, because I'm following you, right? Okay. You guys have any questions about that? All right.
How many of you in here have your own pulse ox? Double check. Okay. We have a solution for that finally. Karen has spent hours in her lit search, and as long as you can get a nice steady green reading on your patient, your pulse oximeter is calibrated, so therefore you can use it for oxygenation. Unless you have spent $200+ and bought the FDA approved oximeter, you never ever use your pulse oximeter for heart rate. You can only use it for oxygen saturation. Okay. What we're finding is a lot of you have your own. So you know when we're updating the policy, no long nails, no fingernail, no shaky person, or you won't get the green light. Okay. Once you have the patient's pulse oximeter and it's using, and you've taken your oxygenation, you do not take the heart rate off of it. We have a lot of people realizing this is a fun gadget, I'm going to take heart rate. We have no orders for pulse ox, and then you come out and say, and the patient's saying to you, where's that little gadget on my finger? I want you to use it. Well, to keep the patient happy, you put it on. Do you have an order for it? If you do not have an order for a pulse ox, and this has never changed in my 30+ year of nursing and home health, if you do not have an order for a pulse oximeter, you either get an order or you don't use your pulse oximeter, pure and simple. So I'm going to give you the examples that the state found. we had a patient, and this was kind of a new one, that the order was written that we would take the pulse oximeter and the reading until the patient's oxygen was removed, because that was our expected outcome. So we know nowadays it can take DME a couple of weeks to come out and get the oxygen, get it out of the house, etc., etc. So on the third week, the surveyor is out with my RN. And even though the RN had looked the night before at all the orders, guess what? He gets out to the house, follows the order to take the pulse oximeter out of his bag and do the oxygenation. But the oxygen is gone. So he didn't need to take it, and that's what we were cited on. So even though this seems like a really strange way to get your surveyor annoyed at what orders you are following, they continue to look at pulse oximeters and always will, for some reason. I don't know why. But it is their pet peeve, which now makes it Sharon's pet peeve. So, no pulse oximeter for heart rate, no pulse oximeter unless you have an order. A PRN has to state the PRN reason you are using it. We were using the pulse oximeter on a really strange situation, that the patient had a huge cavity wound, and so even though we did everything possible, we did take the oximeter and test the oxygenation when we were done, because we could see the lung cavity as we were changing the wound. So, in the frustration of the survey, everybody agreed that was a PRN, and the surveyor even thought it was rather unique, and it helped with the patient outcome. Patient could see his reading when we were done, he felt very comfortable. But it was PRN, because sometimes the patient just said, get out of my house, I don't want you here anymore, because I just want to be in my pain alone. So away the LVN goes, surveyor goes. They talked about it, but guess what? The patient did not refuse the pulse oximeter, so we should have done it PRN. So this is how specific PRN orders should be and have to be completed. And where did that fall under? Not following physician orders. Okay? Those are my two most current stories of pulse oximetry. So you got it up here? Has to be why you're taking it. If you're setting a goal, you must be calling the physician if it's not that. But you can use your own until, if you have any feeling at all that is not accurate, dump it, go get a new one. And we will have some in the supply room for the LVNs. Okay? Because if we say you take it every visit and you don't have a pulse oximeter, see this says every week? We were going weekly on a patient. We didn't take it 1 week because the LVN did not have one. So again, we're not following orders. I'm not going to call insurance and say, guess what? We're going to go out just to take a pulse oximeter check. They're not going to pay for that. So be careful of the orders you're writing. Okay? Always view them.
So the PRN for the pulse ox has to be measurable. We had several orders out there that said PRN nurse's discretion. Kim's discretion's different to mine, to Haya's, to Joy, Teresa, right?
That's what we were taught.
Okay.
To write it in there.
So in the trust atmosphere, in the culture, call the person that's doing that and say, you know what, we need to have a PRN. This is what we learned the other day, so please be specific on why.
PRN shortness of breath.
Right,
PRN
well, that's why
pain.
right now, but we were taught the other way. that you
And
can
3
write
years
it.
ago, that was fine. The other interesting thing I will add is and this is why, remember, regulations and interpretation of regs change all the time.
Right.
And who usually changes the most influence in this country? Your newspaper reporters. It hits the headlines that somebody decided how to use their pulse oximeter differently. And then all of us have to change again. And so legal looks at our response back to the state. So I said to legal, I said, even I, that love to write state reports, do not go down to the Department of Public Health Services and pull up everybody else's report and read them. I don't do that, even though it'd be fun midnight reading, but I don't do it. So I said to legal, why do I have to repeat this on every single patient? Because, we had 30 patients that they looked at. You know who he said goes to the Department of Public Health most often to look at state surveys responses? And what we're all going to do now to keep our patients harm-free, who goes down there? You would think families, right? Because I promise that this has never happened, going to happen again to patient X, that the pulse oximeter is never going to be used incorrectly by my LVN. Who goes with the family? The newspaper reporters. All of your Department of Public Health surveys, the one that we went through, is public.
Right.
You can go down there and read exactly, if you're thinking of going to work for another agency, you go down there and read what their last survey was. People go down there, if I'm applying for a different job, which I'm not, they could go down because I'm director here and say, what doesn't Sharon do right in her agency? I'll just go down to the Department of Public Health because I don't think she knows how to do her thing. And they can read what I am not making you guys do. Because newspaper reporters are gonna go in there and they're gonna pick out a certain patient. And they're gonna follow all the things that we did to harm that patient, and then you'll be in the headlines. So there you go. That's why now if nurse's discretion doesn't work. Okay.
During survey, we took a deficiency because we couldn't show that we actually do our vital signs with our visits.
Oh, you guys would love this.
This blew me away.
And it had to do with our saving, how we were saving, how we were collecting information. So we're going to show you and go over, okay? All right, so under clinical monitoring, we know we need to put vital signs, so we need to put a yes, right? We need to enter all the information, your temperature, pulse, right? You have to list all that. There are plenty of times when we're only entering 2, we forget, we don't do our scale, we save, right? So then by doing that, that causes us a problem to go back and put that information, and we're not quite sure, so a lot of us are putting it in the clinical note. Okay? There's a way to go back and capture it, right? So in order to do that, like we didn't put in scales, I think we put in everything, right? So if I scroll up here, go up just a little bit, and we've done that, there's a little collect readings tab here, right? So by clicking the collect readings, it gives me the opportunity to then insert whatever it is that I did not save, okay? Right? So I can add it on. Here's the thing. I have the same issue. Putting in my information, I'm saving it, right? And I know I'm doing everything the way I'm supposed to, but yet when I'm looking at my vital sign, just pick, yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Like I'll have it here and it's grayed out, so I know it's captured. I don't see it anywhere. So I'm like, well, where is it? How come I don't see it? I know I saved it. Where is it? So then I start looking within the assessment and I'm trying to find it. So the explanation of the program, I'm getting this a little mixed up. Green is always going to be the lowest. Okay, so blue is always going to be the highest that the patient has ever experienced. Doesn't matter who, just throughout the whole assessment, period. The green is going to be the lowest, right? So I look at it and I'm trying to find out, well, where's mine? Where did mine go? There's a white box here. It's very faint on the screen. But if we put the cursor up higher, so see how it goes to an arrow, right? But once I hover, once a cursor goes to that finger like that, it gives me the opportunity. There's information hidden there. So if I double click on that box, a box will come up. So I can say, okay, yeah, it's there. I don't see it anywhere here, but it's here. I've got it.
So did
Okay.
Kelly put all hers in today?
Yeah, she did it.
Okay, so it gives us that
Yes,
opportunity,
that fourth
okay?
is not a good day for you.
But Sharon pointed out in one of our other meetings that the state surveyors are very savvy with all scripts, and they knew to come to this tab, and that's how they found the missing vital signs. So.
Yes.
I have a dilemma, is if you do not save that while you are in clinical monitoring, it does not save.
Right.
Correct.
You go down. So there have been times when, you're going through, you're doing 5 or 6 patients, and you're going through, and you forget to click that, everything vanishes.
That is correct.
Because I had that happen to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, because that is the one thing I always put in. If I put nothing else in, it's the
We believe
clinical
you,
monitoring.
totally.
And it's so, and I always put down under, there's another area where it says, pain and that sort of thing. I always say, please see clinical
Clinical
monitoring in the comment section. And there was nothing there. And I was so
So
shocked.
do you see now how you would check yourself?
I do. But
just
the
tell me
thing
to walk
is
through it
if you save it, there's no problem. But,
But if you don't, then you're going to see that it's not there.
yeah.
So do you understand, or does Kelly need to walk through again how to check yourself?
Would you review it again?
Okay, so when you're,
I know.
go ahead. So when you're in clinical monitoring and you're doing your vital signs, you must complete each component, right? And then you have to save.
And we recommend
Then it
you
sticks.
save at the floppy disk up there. Okay, that's the save we want you to use.
We want you to floppy disk it when you save, okay?
Kelly, could you go through and how you pull up that box to see
Sure.
all the... I just want to see that.
Close it first.
This was the great thing about the survey, otherwise
Right here.
think how long we would have been doing
Right
this.
here.
Right there, just double click.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
See, and once she activated it in this screen, she can click on pulse and it'll still,
Okay.
the screen will still be up there.
So does the edit button though allow you to edit from that screen if you're double checking yourself and forgot to put something in?
Yes. I mean, this edit you can, but we're recommending that you go in through the collect readings
Collect readings,
because
okay.
there is a timestamp here
Right,
that you can use to make it match the time of your visit.
right.
We noticed that clinicians document at 10, 11 o'clock at night or maybe midnight. Sometimes those vitals show that you are document or that you saw the patient then and we know you haven't seen the patient.
So, the nice thing about this also is when you're doing a resume, but particularly a 60-day summary, look at, in the past 60 days, I've had a high and a low in this specific vital sign range. So you have everything there. You don't have to scroll through days and days and days of notes. You have it right there in those colors.
Okay, so during survey, we got a hit, we got a deficiency because we were going out and what was physically inside the patient did not match what our problem was, which is our order. Okay, so we had difficulty trying to track down. We had difficulty trying to show that we were providing and following doctor's orders of monthly cath changes. Couldn't really prove. We were combing through clinical notes. We were combing through it as much as we could to kind of find out how do we show that we actually did it. Okay. All right. So this is what we're going to be going over today. How to show you. Okay. One thing we need to make really clear: all of our orders for Foley catheter, there's no ranges. Right? We don't do ranges. Okay, but we did range. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, okay, so just like we did on paper, there's a few of us in here that were on paper. Okay, every time we did a visit, regardless if it was just a wound care and the patient had a Foley, we had a comprehensive assessment, right? We had to identify if the patient had a Foley and the size that the patient had. Same thing. Yeah. All right, every time you see a patient that has a Foley catheter, every nurse must click the Foley detail. Okay? If it's a suprapubic, we have to hit the detail. As we all know, the more detailed boxes we click, the more boxes that are going to open up. This is a standard. This is a standard. This is clear. This is an expectation. Anytime I see a patient, regardless if it's a PRN wound, a PRN IV, if they have a Foley, I am clicking the Foley detail, which will then open up the Foley straight condom cap to capture the information. Whatever I see on the patient, that's what I'm documenting. If I see a 16 on the patient and it says 16,510, we're going to go with the 10, and that's what I'm going to document. But I better make sure what I'm seeing on the patient, when I go back and I look at my problem, that order says 1610. If it doesn't, I've got a problem. I need to troubleshoot. I need to try to figure out what happened. That's one of the issues we had in survey. Patient had a different size. Lo and behold, the patient went to the hospital, the ER. And in the ER, they put in an 18. But when the patient came back, we had a few opportunities to capture that and clarify, and we didn't, so we took a hit. All right, so I'm on call. I get a call and say that I need to go in PRN, right? Somebody's Foley's out. Call, hey, yeah, this is Rose. I'm coming out. Do you have supplies? Yep, got them. I go out there. Order is an 18, the order is a 16. I go out, I don't have any 16s on me, all I have is an 18. So in that scenario, what would I do? I'm going to call the physician, leave a non-urgent message for the doctor letting them know I've gone out, Foley came out, we had a previous order for a 16, no 16 in supply, I have an 18. I'm going to go ahead and put an 18 in, right? And what am I going to do to the problem? Because I currently have an order for 16. I'm going to end it. I'm going to end that problem. And I'm going to put in a new problem for an 18. I'm going to put a really small snippet in the clinical note, right? Because we need to follow that up. Because if there was a urologist in place, we need to follow up with the urologist. Hey, patient went into the ER, we didn't know, they put in this size. Or, you know, I put in this size because there wasn't anything available. Can I leave it in? And then in 4 weeks, we'll change it back out and put it back to that size? Or do you want me to change it now? Okay?
So, We had a patient that we have been seeing for multiple years, on team 2. And the only thing we do for that patient, that we do as the skilled nurse, is to change the Foley monthly. Now, we also know that this patient has a huge non-healing wound that the wife has cared for 15 plus years. That was nowhere in the doctor's order. Even though all the doctors that the patient goes to knows exactly that that wife cares for that wound. We had no liability mitigation in our notes that the wife was doing it. So that's what came about as we start putting in there. The wife is caring for the non-healing wound. One of my best nurses came from the emergency room. In the emergency room, guess what? They stick in any size Foley that's there. So for a year, this little left box was blank, except one PRN visit. So you have 12 months and you all of a sudden have one in there that it was changed. And I have a monthly change wound, right? Again, my surveyors are pretty savvy with all scripts. The first thing they do is go to this little box. They look at the orders, they go, no monthly change. What happened here, Sharon? Well, evidently it got changed because the patient, I know the patient, he's not septic. So we called the nurse in the trust culture. The ER, you never charted the size Foley that you put in the ER that he had worked with. So he never knew that that box had to be, that he had to chart up here and all of this. He wasn't filling that in. And so we got dinged. Quite embarrassing. Of course, now when they pulled up some other charts, because Vicki in quality assurance pulled up close to 100 Foley catheter patients that we have at the agency. That's a lot of Foley catheters when you think about it. Anyways, the majority might have 6 months filled in, but then the 7th month wasn't. So right now, as of 10 days ago at this point, every single patient in this agency has this filled in as much as Vicki could from your clinical notes, and this is accurate per all the orders. So henceforth, there should not be a discrepancy without, as Kim was saying, you end the problem and you start in new doctor's orders. Because we are going to be checking this just like the surveyors did. It's really quick to check. Okay? So again, if you're out there and one of your teammates is not doing this, get a hold of them and say, you probably slept through that story of Sharon's, but you got to be doing it right. And help them through it. Okay?
Okay, so we're clear. To see a Foley catheter patient, you have to identify. But remember, this needs to match your order. If you're ever changing, you always have to document it here. That runs that long list, okay? And also the reports that they run, because they're going to be QAing all this, and they're going to be running these special reports, and they're only going to be looking for this. This is the only way that information is going to capture, is if we put the date that we changed, okay? All right? So the problem, what surveyors discovered, wound measurements were not consistently documented weekly. We did not specify, that's that plan of care, who was providing the care, the wound care. Talks also about the care of the wound or ostomy or G-tube, okay, because we had patients that had been with G-tube and independent and we didn't have any solid documentation. Clearly documentation of the wound care orders to match the actual site. Okay, we had discrepancies. We had discrepancies in our assessment. We were assessing the left heel, but the treatment was actually on the right heel. Okay, we had that issue. We also had issue on paper, and we have it in the computer age. Our orders were not complete. And what I mean by that, we had the site of where we were putting the treatment. We had the actual treatment, but we never had a frequency. We just had that we were changing the dressing, putting a certain application. That's it. But no frequency. Okay? That being said, we always have to keep in mind that if we're doing a certain amount of frequency, we better make sure who's doing it, that frequency. If nursing is owning the wound 3 times a week, what do we need to make sure? Our visit frequency matches that. There's a lot of that out there, okay? Across the board. It's not just one team, it's all of us. It's all inclusive, okay? So we need to go over that. Are we clear that we need to measure wounds every week? We all know how to look to see if the wounds have been measured, because we've had several clinicians from each team say, well, I didn't know to measure it. How am I supposed to know? It's Thursday, and we've already had 2 other nurses that saw it. They should have already measured it. Or back in the day, it was Wound Wednesday, and I saw the patient on Thursday. That's not going to work, okay? We need to all be on the same page. So the same flow of how to be able to check to see if that Foley was last changed, it's the same component, right? If I'm in an assessment and I'm in any part of the assessment, if I just even click in that little corner and I'm in the corner of an assessment, all I do is look and I can see all the previous responses and who put that one in. Oh my God. Okay? Right click, good concept. Bad practice, especially when we have items in there that we're right clicking. I'm going back to Foley on this, where we just clicked normal. Patient had a Foley and they were up in the bathroom peeing, according to my assessment that I signed off on electronically. This is what I try to go to a court of law with that. And if you've ever been to court, which I have, really hard to argue your way out of it. It's all there and it's what you clicked. I'm still responsible for our clicking, okay? You guys have any questions regarding that? That one's pretty clear, right? Okay. So the order must have a site, right? Type of treatment and the frequency. Okay. We got hit a few years ago and we kind of forgot this electronically, that we used to say when you write an order and you're cleansing, we wanted you to put wound cleanser / normal saline in case I didn't order any wound cleanser and Kim's following me and all she's got is saline. If she's not putting the wound cleanser on, we're going to take a hit because now we're cleaning with normal saline. Okay? We've had clinicians go out, do a treatment. It's not what's in the problem, which is what my order says, but because Rose put this treatment on and she's pretty good at it. Yeah, Rose. She's awesome! She knows what she's doing. She must have gotten the order. She just didn't synchronize it, or I don't know. But I'm just going to put what Rose put in there. But my order is something different. Then Joy's going to follow me, and she's like, oh my God, I hate following Rose. She writes all these orders and doesn't. We have that responsibility. If what I see doesn't match my order, we've got a problem. And we need to clarify right then and there. And then it's that circle of trust that we've kind of talked about, how we handle our relationships and talking with one another. Okay, this is a process change. Managers will no longer be entering the wound care orders from the wound care centers that are faxed to the office. They're going to be giving them back out to us in the field. The reason for that, because the managers were just putting in exactly what the wound care center said in terms of the site location, because sometimes the wound care center was identifying it a little bit differently than how we've been capturing it for 2 months. We got hit. Makes sense. We're the ones seeing it. So we have the opportunity to make sure, oh, okay, right, okay, makes sense.
But if the order is different from what we have in there, is that are we going to get dinged for that?
No, okay, so the wound care order is, what is our basic practice? We don't mess with wound care center orders. That's what we follow. We don't even change them, right? Did you know that? Wound care centers, we don't mess with their orders.
Okay.
They run the show. They run the football,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So if they're giving us an order, that's what we follow. So
Correct.
therefore, we need to change whatever the current problem is, whatever the current order is, to
Okay.
reflect the updated order from the wound care center.
So then why would the manager not be able to input that, since that's exactly what we need to do?
Because sometimes we call things left lower leg, and they're calling it left lower extremity or
Yes.
left calf.
It's the verbiage.
It's
Yes.
the verbiage.
It is.
But it's different. If you look at it legally, those are two different
Two
places.
different places.
So what they're inputting needs to match what's already there.
Correct. Because I may say.
But even though that order is,
The treatment order,
the treatment order should be in exactly as they wrote it.
Well,
And
the
if
order-
that is different from what we've had, should we not change what we normally have had to their?
your treatment order has to change. The location remains the same in our verbiage, not the wound care center
Okay,
location.
so the location doesn't have to be exactly like their location.
Right, we're trying, what we're
Okay.
doing is, since we're the eyes on, we're gonna
Okay.
verify and make sure exactly what
Okay.
they're saying. Because what was happening is, all through the assessment, we were identified as a left
Something
lower leg.
else. Okay,
And then the wound care center, all of a sudden, they got a new nurse, and they identified it a little bit differently in the wound care center. The manager came in and said, okay, new order, ended that one, and then we have a different location compared to in the assessment, what we've been assessing and measuring all this time. So the state survey is gonna say, well, it says up here you've been doing this, and all of a sudden, is this a new wound? So what we took a hit on in the survey is Medalist had 1 flush identified, okay? some with our protocol, some without our protocol. So we're gonna go over the infusion kit button in the med list. Then in the interventions or the problems, we had another flush, if we were lucky, put there. And then in the clinical note, we had something else, because that's what I used to do when I worked at Hoag 10 years ago, and that's what I remember, because I have to free text us all this information. And why do they expect us to remember all this and type it in so many different places? We're going to show you what we've done to correct that, okay? The other problem we had is in our interventions, the statement is perform PICC care, right? We got hit because it says, well, it doesn't identify who's performing the PICC care. So now we've gone back in the program and we've changed and we put SN in front of it, okay? What we've done now is we're going to show you, it's in teaching mode, it should be coming out next week. What we've done is we've completely inputted, so our infusion problem right now looks like this. When you add a row, it's going to be huge. And that's because we have every single line clearly identified, already typed in for the nurses. All you got to do is click the box that says angiocath, and it'll have the whole flush protocol there. It'll have how much you're supposed to withdraw. This will minimize the amount of calls that we get. Say, I don't remember a policy. How much do I pull out again? How much do I need to flush? Same thing with our PICC care. Okay, we're going to have it all there, and we're going to give you an example of what we have so far. It's got our whole PICC protocol in there. We'll have one that says the whole PICC protocol with the CHG disc, one full PICC protocol without the CHG disc, okay? Gauze dressing with our protocol, Portacath, everything. And we had to do it this way because we were all over the place. That being done, you don't want to see any of that stuff in the clinical note. Flushed with 10 cc's, withdrew 5, patient tolerated well. It's going to be in the problem. So if I'm charting against my problem and I'm indicating yes, that means that I flushed that angiograph per my protocol and patient tolerated well. Moving on. Our clinical notes are going to start looking like this.
Thank God.
Not like that. Praise, right? Okay? So we're going to show you. First thing we need to do is we need to show you the med list so we can make sure everybody knows that there's a kit there. Okay? The other thing that we are going to be doing, so you do know, currently we have like the tubing change and it makes you click the button, but then you have to put the modifier in. We're eliminating that. We're just going to put our whole protocol that talks about line and how often we change our infusion lines. Our tubing, 4 to 7 days in PRN. Cap change, a few week, PRN lab draws, PRN complications. It's going to be there. It's not going to force the modifier. But we have to do our part. We have to click the right buttons, right? Okay. The other thing that's coming in is an Activase order. Stand. I want credit for that one. I want credit. Doesn't go to you, Marty Bruce. Goes to me. We'll put the Activase so it's standardized and it's got the whole protocol on how much you're supposed to infuse. It's supposed to and withdraw all that. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm like Daffy Duck with the pearl in the clan. Mine. Anyway, all right. So everybody's aware of the kit button in this room. We have no ahas. We've had an aha in every class. Kit button, right? All you got to do is find your kit, double click on it. Once you've double clicked on it, click OK. Comes up here, click OK. Okay, so if you hit the 3 dots and you're like, well, what is our protocol? I don't remember. Well, we get that 1 cc. In the hospital, we're at St. Joseph Home Health. This is our protocol, right? Here we go. So it's all clear here. Click OK, so we're good. So we're going to just show you really quickly the problems. This is in training mode, so this is how they're currently looking. If we can just get this new. So here's what they're going to look like. We have it in training mode because this is only as far as we've got. So if you hover, it's got our whole protocol here. So all that you guys got to do is click the right button. Okay, we can't do everything.
How you figured out the correct line?
Make sure you know what line. Yes.
It says cleansing chlorhexidine, but you know that the kids now are coming out with some different alcohol and it's I can't remember what it's called.
Isn't it chlorhexidine?
It is still
Is there
chlorhexidine.
one- You know what, I didn't even notice.
It's still chlorhexidine. It's just a different brand. But here's another thing, different application. We're also going to put if you're allergic to chlorhexidine, here's your protocol. Okay, so it's there. Okay, We're gonna leave one generic because we can't capture every
Right.
kook out there, okay? So if there's something kooky out there that you're gonna have to actually put in,
Put in.
sorry sisters, we did the best we could with this one, okay? But it's gonna have your every protocol, Portacath will be in here, everything will be in here. It's your responsibility. Something that has fallen through the wayside, I don't know if that's the right word. But, back on paper, we were responsible for putting all of our infusion information. So when I went out and saw a patient and it was a syringe, I had to put exactly what the dose was, the route, where that paper was, it's everywhere. How long it needed to be infused for, at a rate of, all that information that when I go to a patient's house, it's on the bottom. We have to be putting that in the information. There you go. So the name of the med, the dose, solution, amount, route, infusion duration, and rate. Okay, needs to go on our orders. We've been writing bad orders, okay? What's going to be in the program, just like we had generic wound care interventions, we're going to have generic infusion. So we're going to have about 5 opportunities to list 5 different IV antibiotics if there are. So that if you're administering it, all you got to do is click the box yes, tolerated well, you're done, right? Infusion hydration solutions will have 5 opportunities to be able to put whatever infusion solutions. Actually, that's really it for the infusion part. So once these buttons become active, hopefully next week you'll get a voicemail. But then it'll be our clinical responsibility to do that. Okay, so remember all this information was based upon the survey and part of our plan of correction. You will be getting updates as we're tightening things up. It's going to come through your huddles. Okay? All right. Thank
So
you.
I also know that there's probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on where you're at in understanding the computer. So put that on your time log when you get to it in the next week or two as Allscripts orientation code, and read your handouts and understand them. If not, education is available, so go one-on-one with them so you understand what's going on.
All right. Thank you.